Hi everyone, welcome to Rolling with V. Today we're chatting to Dawie de Villiers from Glenwood Motors. Ever since I've known Alfa in South Africa, Dawie's name has been synonymous with the brand. Glenwood Motors was always involved with high quality, classy racing back in the day, aggressive at times. Dawie, welcome.
Thank you, Vashan.
How are you doing today?
I'm well. The weather is good, and I think there's a future ahead of us in motor racing, and we'll never see the old days again, but I think up front we can have proper racing in this country.
What drew you to the Alfa brand in South Africa versus any other brand?
Vashan, it started in 1973 when I went into a service station and had to make a living from a workshop, and picked up this interest in repairing motor cars and driving an Alfa at that stage. I got involved in the technical side of the Alfa engine, and I liked it. And over the years, that was always part of my life.
The production car series in South Africa was an amazing event, had a lot of popularity and grew lots of attention. Tell us how you got involved in that.
The technical manager of Alfa Romeo, Giovanni Piazzamusso, really got me involved. He said, Dawie, let's prepare this car for Group 1 racing and let's go and enjoy ourselves. And with very little money involved, and just started a new business, I still just went for it, and that's where it all started. Production car racing was a huge success, and we're all still dreaming about it. The manufacturers was involved, and the public could relate to it. Ford Motor Company, BMW, Alfa Romeo, Mazda, and many others were very involved. And the public enjoyed it, and they attended racing.
Let's talk about bending the rules. At some point, at times, other manufacturers were faster and more competitive, and then you guys came back. There must have been some trickery in it in order to get the cars faster. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, good question, and a very debatable question. But looking at the rules, everybody had to comply to a compression ratio of 10:1. No more. 10.1 was absolute, the maximum. If you were caught at 10.2 to 1 compression ratio, you had severe trouble. And it was measured virtually after every race meeting. I can tell you now that at one stage, while my car was winning with Abel de Oliveira, we were stripped 3 times in a row, and everything was checked. There was no porting of the cylinder heads allowed. You could only work on the valve seats. Camshaft was totally free. Setup was much more important because of the suspension regulations. Coil springs had to be standard, anti-roll bars had to be standard, and only shock absorbers were free. Very easy to control, and setup, driver, that was what was important. And there's people around you. You can't make a monkey trick, Guys in the old days disappeared with a cylinder head and bring another cylinder head while they were having a beer. That was out. It was technical guys standing there, the Jeff Mortimers and a couple of others from the AA and the opposition. They want to see, is Dawie de Villiers' car crooked or not? And they come with the berets. One come and measure, And he take out his book, say, okay boys, I'm happy. Next one come in. Start from scratch. TDC, combustion chamber, gasket, Biret, CC. They say, yeah, but I don't get 51. The figure was 51.5. I get 51.3. Then they work out and say, no, that's still in the limit.
Yeah.
You're still not over 10.121. And all agree, no porting done. The carburetors inside is not been opened up. It had to be 34 millimeter. They go and measure. Now it's 34. Then they go to your anti-roll bars. They measure your anti-roll bar and say, no, that's standard. They go to your coil springs and measure them. And then they weigh the car and they say, you're legal or you're not legal. And it was easy. It was so easy. But it was all about hours and hours of setting up.
Yeah.
How much negative camber, how much toe in, how much toe out. Shock rates, that was free. Harder, softer, harder, softer. We went out with 3-4 sets of tires and very careful, see what the time clock say, and we didn't stop till it was perfect. And the Alfa just had the better grip. Klar.
In the racing series, how many Alphas against the rest of the manufacturers?
At one stage there was about 7 Alphas in Class A. There was a couple of BMWs and there was a couple of Ford V8s, of which 2 was works cars. There was the famous late Tony Viana that ran the BMW team, and he was always the main competitor. And then Alfa Romeo had always a minimum of 2 works cars with the late Nicola Bianco involved, and his younger brother Maurizio Bianco, and a couple of other important drivers like the Cavalieri brothers ran Alfa Romeos, and I ran a private team under Glenwood Motors with my driver Abel de Oliveira, the late Abel de Oliveira, who was always with Nicola Bianco, Tony Viana of the front runners.
Tell us about the 3 litre.
In 1983, Alfa Romeo only had a 2.5 GTV6, and we just could not compete to the bigger engine Fords and BMWs and Mazdas. And the approach was to Italy to build a 3-litre engine. This was not easy because the 3-litre engine was not on Italy's agenda at all. But between Mr. Roger McCleary, Dr. Vito Bianco of Alfa, and Sampi Boardman, the racing department officer at that stage, convinced Italy to build a special 3-litre version of the GTV6 2.5. They eventually agreed to this, and it wasn't easy, and it was expensive, and we had to homologate it. We had to build 200 cars to be sold to the public. There was no other way than that. You had to homologate the car, and the figure was 200. So a minimum of 200 were built using the 2.5 Alfa sedan carburetor engine. These engines came in complete from Italy, and they were stripped here in South Africa, and they were converted to 3-litre with 6 carburetors. That was successful, and that was the basis of the 3-litre GTV6. The car at that stage produced 128 kilowatt, which was quite good for a 3-litre road car with only 9:1 compression ratio. And the success of the car was in the suspension and rear gearbox setup.
How many to the point of cars, production cars were built? Was it 200 on the dot, 212, 180? Because there's a lot of figures floating around.
Vashan, it's not exactly 100% sure how many were built. I've got a figure of 208,
Okay.
of which a couple right at the end before they stopped production on that car was fuel injected cars. I know of at least 4 fuel injected 3-litre cars, which was also homologated, but most definitely there were a minimum of 208 built.
Let's talk about the South African production 3-litre that was sold to the public. What were the key differences between the 2.5 GTV6 versus the 3-litre GTV6?
The main difference was in the engine. The 3-litre engine was absolutely made from the 2.5 carburetor engine. The cylinder head got bigger valves. The crankshaft was changed, and the stroke went to 72 millimeter to make it 3-litre. The gearbox was identical to the 2.5, the clutch was identical, the prop shaft was identical. All the suspension parts were identical to the 2.5 version. The only other change on the 3-litre was the compomotive rims. And the bonnet had the famous 3-litre fiberglass bonnet with a scoop in front, and the front spoiler was also a special one, especially for the 3-litre. The rest was all, there were smaller changes, like the seats were a bit different, but the basic car was very much based on a 2.5. The standard 3-litre came off from the plant with exactly the same gearbox and clutch as a 2.5. The limited slip diff was an optional extra, and there was 2 gear ratios homologated. It was either a 4.1 ratio or a 4.3 ratio.
How difficult is it to tune those carburetors? Tuning on one carburetor is difficult enough, and it's becoming a lost art. Now to manage 6.
It was a problem, but luckily it came from the factory, so well set up that it wasn't a real problem. Once we knew what jets to use, it was quite easy to control. Based on the same engine, I also do the conversion for 24 valve cylinder heads, and it can come in various forms. It can go either into a rear drive GTV6, or it can go into a front wheel drive GTA, and it can come in 3-litre or 3.2 or 3.7 litre versions, and it is extremely successful and very powerful. And this is what I'm doing at present.
Guys, that's our insert for today. Dawie, as always, a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, but come for a drive.
All right, let's go for it.